we're not against people coming in and getting one-on-one. Like, you did all your drill work that you're supposed to do. You knew how to do that. Like, a lot of those things are self-explanatory. They're not needed to have a person there. There's times where there is going to be a person for it, and like they might see it something different, or like you video it and then you review it. Like, that's different than like that 30 minutes to an hour that you have where you're spending all that money like once a week. It's like that's not going to change things. It's everything else that you're doing outside of this session. What's up, guys? Back on another episode of the Pro Source Pod. Today we are going to be talking about in-person lessons and why we should get away from them, and they're a thing of the past. So we're going to go step by step, kind of why we think that they're not worth the money. And I mean, it's pretty simple from our perspective, especially from doing them so often. So we're going to kind of tell you guys, like, if you are doing them, what to look out for and what to really focus on if you are doing them. So
yeah, and how you can make them better. We're not saying that, in-person lessons are the devil. It's just if you are doing them, it's like there's a right and a wrong way to go about it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the most important thing about this is why lessons are like ineffective in terms of frequency. One, they're expensive. But two, like most people will only come in once a week.
Yeah.
Say like it's usually like the structure of like a half hour or an hour. Well, if you're coming in once a week for an hour, that's not enough because it's all about what you're doing outside of there. So it's like people think because they come in for an hour a week, that's like, oh, like they're getting better, they're getting their work in. It's like, no. And like, that's not the important part. The important stuff is everything else that's going on in the first place.
And then you'll get the parents who bring their kids in like, oh, Johnny has a game in an hour, but came here to get our lesson in. It's like, no, Johnny should be resting before a game and like not waiting until the day of to review the shit he needs to learn. Like, Johnny should be doing that every single day.
I mean, it's just like no one gets the reps in when they're outside of the building almost.
Yeah, very few.
Or like the stuff they need to. So it's like as you get older, it's more so like it's not what you're going to do in a lesson. Like a lot of guys go to programs where like they're part of like a group program. Like that's fine. Like that's like more beneficial than doing lessons at a certain point just for the fact that you're doing more and it's more frequent.
Yeah.
So it's like the fact that someone's going to be doing like 3 to 4 days a week or 3 to 5, whatever the program structure is, they're going to have their throwing stuff and they're going to have a lift included with that. And that stuff is the more important bulk of it instead of just throwing in front of someone and like getting troubleshooting steps all the time.
For sure. And it's like your rate of improvement as a player is going to be so much slower from just coming in once or twice a week. And just do it like, because like we've seen it, we've had kids that we've given lessons to for like a year, and like they get better.
Well, the problem is it's just slow.
That's
right?
what I'm saying. That it's so much slower.
And it's really, it's like there's rare times where I have a lesson where I give them homework and they actually do it.
100%.
Because I give them homework all the time, but they don't do it.
Yeah, every single lesson, it's like, hey, like this is what we need to work on at home. Like this is like, and you probably say the same thing, but it's like saying to all my lessons, it's like, dude, I try to explain to them every single time. It's like, what we're doing in here is important. Like, this is where you're going to really feel out what you're doing wrong. But it's like, take these drills that I'm teaching you and do them when you're at practice or when you're playing catch with dad or your buddies in the yard. Like, you have to do it outside of just coming here once a week.
And it leads into the next thing. It's like, if you're coming in once a week, like every week for a year, you're not going to get bad, but like it's not necessarily going to take you to the next level because at a certain point it just becomes so repetitive where like people just take orders. They don't think.
Yeah.
And part of it is if you're going to do something like that, you don't need like your guy or whoever it is to like tell you what to do step by step. Like, go do this T drill. Like, then we're going to do this, like the progression. Like, that's not necessary, and your guy's not needed for that. So, like, if you're a pitcher, right? If you're a pitcher, there's no reason that the warm-up should be part of your 30 minutes to an hour lesson that you get. And, like, that's what it is all the time because people don't prepare before they come in. They show up at the time, and then it's like, oh, well, and you're not going to skip the stretch, right? So now you have to condense it when it should really be, like, closer to a half hour to do all their stuff.
Yeah. And if
before you throw.
Yeah, and like if they have a half-hour lesson, it's like you obviously want to try to condense the stretch a little bit, and even that takes what, like 10 minutes, and one, that's not enough time.
Well, yeah,
usually.
most pitchers at that, like at a younger age too, or like I'm even older. Like, there's really not that many people doing hour pitching lessons.
Yeah.
It's really like more half hour. Like, hour stuff is usually more like hitting fielding stuff. But like for whatever reason, like pitchers come in for half hour for lessons. And
Yeah, and
that's-
honestly, an hour is nice because then you don't have to rush the warm up. You
But
can
part
actually
of
go
it
through
is-
a full throwing progression. But
it's not
like,
even necessary to have that.
and that's where
because
I was going to go with it.
You're
'cause
only needed for
you
maybe
should
15 minutes.
Yeah, and like they should be preparing before they actually come in the
And know
building.
what to do.
Exactly. Like if they show up early, they see we're in another lesson. Like go to some space in another cage. Like do your warm up. Because it's like you're gonna
everyone's-
get the most out of it that way.
Everyone's so used to just being told what to do, though.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like I feel like coaches have failed because the IQ, like, just in general, the game has been so dumbed down where it's go do this, 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 that. And, like, no player knows how to think for themselves, like, okay, it's time to get ready. Like, let me get started. Like, no one really does that. They just wait to take their orders.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm for my lesson. I'm going to be told what to do. And, like, yeah, you're going to listen, but at the same time, like, there's things that you should be doing. It's like, you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, go do this, X, Y, and Z. And, like, I'm going to watch. And you don't need me to watch every step of the way, though. It's like, I don't need to watch you do arm circles.
100%,
Right?
dude.
Like,
And at that point, it's just going through the motions.
exactly.
It really is just going through the motions. They're mindlessly just doing what they're told, and like, hey, Johnny, go do your 10 reverse throws into the plyo wall. And it's like, oh, like what ball should I use? Like,
You know what
dude,
you're, yeah,
you know what you need to use.
Yeah.
I don't need to tell you. But it's like, dude.
Or like,
such-
you'll get the, like, how do I do that? Like, repeat, like, every single week.
we do it every single week.
Yeah, it's like the same band exercise. It's like, you got to do this. Like, what do I do? How do I do it? It's like, dude, I've showed you like 17 times.
So funny story about like that example specifically, the band. I started, and I never told you were Dan about this, but like I started running an experiment with all my guys.
What was
and
it?
I don't, I haven't been telling them what to do when it comes to bands. I just said,
And you
like,
just see what they do?
after we go through like our dynamic, I'll tell them, like, all right, like go grab bands. They put it on the wall, and then they just look at me. And pretty much every one of them
They
does
just
it.
wait.
There's maybe 5 or 6 kids
That start doing stuff.
that actually remember the warm up and start doing stuff. And like, funny enough, those are the kids that have, one, been with me the longest, and 2, have actually gotten better.
Yeah.
So it's like, dude, most of those kids just, like, I kid you not, they put these bands on the fence and they just stare at me waiting for orders. And it's like, it's crazy. So I stopped telling them like what to do. I'm like, you remember this, go through the bands. And it's like, their wheels spin for a little bit. Some of them are just kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, no problem. But usually they end up remembering it. And like every single exercise down to a T, they end up remembering. It's just like, oh, I actually have to think about it.
They don't think.
They
They're
don't
waiting
think.
To be told.
They don't think.
But like, we're not we're not against people coming in and getting one-on-one work.
Not at all.
Like, I personally think that like group training, not bad at all. Because you're gonna get a lot of stuff in, and it's gonna be more frequent, there's gonna be more stuff going on. Then like there's the other side of it where it's like, if you're doing one-on-one, you should like have a built out thing with someone already.
100%.
Where it's like, even if it's just you're getting homework from the person that you're training with, like make sure like they're doing something where it's like, or like you're in some type of program designed for you where it's like, go do this. Okay. Like on the day of that you're going to be throwing, like we're going to be together for this, because now it's like we did all our stuff. Let's see like what's actually coming out. Like you did all your drill work that you're supposed to do. You knew how to do that. Like a lot of those things are self-explanatory. They're not needed to have a person there. There's times where there is going to be a person for it, and like they might see it something different, or like you video it and then you review it. Like that's different than like that 30 minutes to an hour that you have where you're spending all that money like once a week. It's like that's not going to change things. It's everything else that you're doing outside of this session.
Yeah.
And it's like you get to a point even like on our end where you know you have 30 minutes to an hour. So all the stuff that you really have to do, like there might be one thing you really need to do. When I say one thing, like someone can't move a certain way, there's one drill that you guys should do for literally an hour nonstop, or one movement that you just continuously do until it becomes like second nature.
And sometimes it's not
And
even
you
a
can't-
baseball thing.
Yeah, and you can't do that. And you can't do it because whoever's paying for it is going to be really confused and have questions on what the hell you guys just did, because you didn't throw, you didn't hit. Like, it looked like you kind of were just doing a weird exercise for an hour or a half hour. And it's like, you know, you can't do that because then they're going to not like it. Like, they're not going to like the product. Like, they want to see you doing like X, Y, Z.
You almost have to put on a show.
Exactly. And like, on our perspective, it's like, yes, we do what we're supposed to. Like, I'm not going to say like we don't avoid that.
Yeah.
But like, you also know from the kid's perspective, that kid's not getting like whatever work actually throwing or like hitting or whatever the case might be. So like, not only can you not just do that, even though they have to do the other stuff because they're not doing it anywhere else. You know what I mean? So it's like everything gets condensed into that time frame. The most important thing gets thrown to the side because you can't, because they have to do the other stuff. So it's like you're not getting enough at all when like it very seriously could be taken care of, just getting it programmed out. And it's not even like to sell anything really. It's just the truth. It's like you have to be doing more than 1 hour a week or whatever workouts you're doing or whatever. Like, you have to dedicate probably on a minimum of like 2 hours a day to working at your craft, whether it's like throwing related, hitting related, lifting related, whatever it is. Like, all of that's combined together. Like, 2 hours should be suffice to get all your work in, where it's like the little drill stuff that you did in your lesson, instead of doing them in your lesson, you did them before your lesson. And like, those are the reps that you need constantly, because that's what's going to make the difference when you actually go to do the stuff.
Yeah. Dude, yeah, honestly hit the nail on the head with that one. You really did. And it's like, yeah, like show up like at home, do your pipe work, do your band shit, and
do your
like,
med balls, like,
and when
all
we come
that
in,
stuff.
when you come in, you're ready to go. Like, I'm speaking from a pitching lesson perspective. It's like the most important thing I do with kids is honestly just review their video of their mechanics. Like 90% of the kids, that's what they need, because they actually need to see what they're doing wrong.
Well, would you say that we have to teach them how to think, not how to just take orders?
Yes, absolutely.
Because how do you diagnose what you're doing?
You have to understand what you're doing.
Exactly. So it's like, I feel like that gets glossed over a lot, where people don't actually teach what and why you're doing it. They just tell people to do it.
Yeah. That's why, like, going back to the video thing that I was talking about, it's like, I want them to understand why I'm having them do a certain drill, why I'm having them, you know, move their body a certain way, giving them a specific cue. It's like, dude, this is what you're doing. This is how we fix it. You
give them the tools and you treat them like an adult.
100%.
It doesn't matter how old they are.
Yeah, whether they're 5 years old or 15 years old, it doesn't matter.
Because from my perspective, right, you tell them why they're going to a certain spot, right? Throwing, why are they missing arm side? Like, that's a symptom of what? Like, what could that be possibly?
Could be, it could be a lot of things. Could be a late arm. Could be, you know, you striding across your body.
Yeah.
Like, for everyone, it's different.
What if you're yanking it left side, like you're a right-handed pitcher, you're yanking it on the opposite side of the plate?
Yeah, you could be early. You could be, your stride could be too short. Like, multiple kids have those same problems, but the diagnosis is different for everyone.
And you kind of have to understand what it could be.
Yeah.
So then you have to like know what your body's doing, and you have to understand it.
Exactly.
Like, it's not just, oh, I'm doing this. Okay, now I can fix it. It's like, no, right? This is happening in game. Like, what is your focus? Like, your cues that you're trying to do every time. And it's like, okay, if I'm missing this way, it could be a couple different things. For me, what is it most likely to be? Now let me focus on a different cue to try changing it.
100%.
And it could be that cue doesn't really get them to, like, it could be something so outrageous like the real versus feel thing, where like whatever their extreme is makes a slight change, but it's the right change.
100%.
And they have to figure that out. Because like, I can tell you to do something and what to feel. You can try doing it, it doesn't work. If you try something extreme that's not the same thing, it might work. And just knowing how to do that.
Yeah, and it's like on the opposite side of that, it's like you don't want to get queued up to the point where you're like, you get like Q, 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 Q.
Oh, you also can't think about like 35 things.
You
at
can't
once.
think about 35 things at once. And that's where lessons are really good, because obviously they're paying to have someone tell them what's wrong with them, what their diagnosis is.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this is what you need to do. And then it's like, it's just going back to what we said before. It's just taking it outside of the lesson setting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the cues thing. The cue thing's so interesting because sometimes cues don't work with kids.
No,
like everyone's different.
For them, it's they're still trying to figure out how to move their body.
Yeah.
So like some kids are farther along than others just because they're more coordinated at that age. Where it's like a lot of like people don't start to really become baseball players until they're like 16, 17, when they start to actually mature physically into like a man.
Yeah.
So it's like at that point they get more coordinated, they can move better, they get a little bit stronger, and it's not like they're Gumby anymore. Like they can actually move. So usually the super tall kid, everyone usually loves them because it's like they should be so good and they're big. They usually stink until they get older because it takes them longer
So
to
true.
Yeah, no, it takes them longer to develop their
Literally
movement.
grow into their body.
Yeah, like they don't know how to move for a long time. So it's very rare you see a giant person at a young age who's like really good.
Yeah. It's tough. It's rare. It's few and far between for sure. But like another interesting thing, like obviously regarding this whole topic, first lessons. Like the first time you ever see a kid. It's like
You're not doing anything.
you're not doing anything.
And like some people try to get right into stuff. It's like you have to see what the person does.
Really like
if you don't see what the kid does, you're failing them already.
it's
an evaluation.
It takes like 2 to 3, I'd say 2 usually, but sometimes up to 3 lessons, like for me to really understand how a kid moves and like why he moves this way. And then it's like from then we can start to really hammer out what they need to do to get better.
Or maybe just process slow.
Yeah, it's
No, you.
that's true.
No, but that's true though, because it's like the sample size of you seeing someone throw like one time, they might have just been on that day.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then the next time you see them, it's like, what's going on here?
That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, it's same thing on like doesn't matter whether it's hitting, fielding, like pitching, like it's all the same.
Yeah.
And like some common symptoms like for hitters, right? A lot of it's like, oh, like they roll over. Well, why do you roll over? Like, are you sitting back? Like, are you turning through? Are you extending too early? And it's like you start to talk them
So
through
that
like
could be
what
multiple
yeah.
things.
And you start to talk them through like what's going on. It doesn't matter what it is, like baseball related. Like there's always a diagnosis to the symptoms of like what's wrong. And like you get to a certain point where it's like the actual physical skill isn't what matters. It's the thought process to make the adjustments. Like all of what you're supposed to be learning in your lessons or in your training is how to think. If you know how to think, like when you're in game, all that matters is how you perform. So you have an at bat against someone, right? Say you're a hitter for this example. You're a hitter. You had 2 awful swings and you know exactly what you did. And it's like you fouled off super, super early. Oh, crap. Like I know he's going to throw me. How do I make the adjustment? Okay, I felt this. You got to make it quick. And if you can't make quick adjustments, you're not going to last in this game.
Yeah.
Even as a pitcher, you keep missing arm side. Why am I missing arm side? Do you just keep throwing or do you think about what you have to do differently? Well, what happens if you go to pull it now? Like you have to make quick adjustments because what happens if you walk 2 straight batters?
Yeah.
They got the bullpen up. Like, so everything comes back to you have to make your adjustments in game. How do you make adjustments if you don't know what you're doing? And you have to know what you're doing. You have to know why you're doing it. And it's like just connecting everything that you've been working on training wise, what the symptom could be the cause of. Like why is that happening? Okay, this is why it's happening. Now let's go make the adjustment necessary. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's baseball. It's really hard.
Yeah. And like I love what you said about like going back to what you do training wise, because that's really what it is. Like,
yeah.
I don't want don't get it confused when you're in a game. Like just taking a pitching standpoint, the last thing you should be thinking about is your mechanics. Like every single thing.
You do it all so that when you go, you perform.
But that's what I'm saying is like you do it so many times and you work on the actual right thing, right thing. So then it's like that split second, say you step off the mound, you just walk 4 straight guys on arm side fastballs. You step on the mound, you're like, okay, I remember why I'm doing this. Remember like this cue or this feel, whatever. Shut the brain off and go back into compete mode. And it's like you've done it so many times outside of the game where it's just second nature.
Yeah. Well, I mean, shining example, honestly, is if you guys want to go have a laugh and see some of like what we're doing with one of my good friends, Pat. He's an electrician. He hasn't thrown a baseball since like 4th grade, and like we're teaching him how to like pitch now. But like there was one day in specific where we did a bunch of drill work, like just drill work straight up, going into like him getting on the mound and stuff.
Yeah.
He threw way better after the first week, looking absolutely atrocious.
Horrible.
But the whole time we were
Still doesn't look great.
Yeah, but we were just drilling him to death. And then like it was like we told him, don't think, just throw. It's like, dude, you did everything to make it so you can throw well or better than what it was. So it's like that's what's making the difference. Like you do all that stuff, you think about it while you're doing it. You're done doing those drills. When it's time to throw, just throw. You did all the reps of like what's broken down. Like you did it. Now just go do it.
Your body doesn't just forget.
No, it's muscle memory.
It's muscle memory. It's like, yeah, you do it. If you do something 100 times in a row, thinking about it consciously, and then you go to do the same thing, not thinking about it, probably going to do the same thing. Probably going to do the same thing. It's just, it's muscle memory. And it's like, it's just, and honestly, like, and I don't want to go too long with this, but it does come back to shortcuts. Because a lot of kids, especially nowadays, they just want like, hey, I want one lesson, I want to gain 5 miles per hour. One lesson, I want to gain 20 miles per hour to my exit.
No one has
velo.
the patience, really.
No one has the patience. No one has the patience. And it's like the game will weed those kids out like that. As soon as they get to high school, dude, they're done.
Do you have any tips for anyone before we wrap this up?
Commit to something. Don't look for the short answer. Just like commit to a process, get a second opinion, and just execute. And don't be a robot and take orders all the time. Think for yourself.
My tip for you guys would be make sure whatever coach you have, they're actually teaching you how to think. Like if they're not teaching you the IQ of why you're doing something, if they don't have a reason why you're doing something, look deeper into it and question them. Because no one should just give people things without giving them a reason.
Absolutely.
And if they can't explain the reason,
then it's not valid.
And like if you don't like the reason or you don't understand it, keep asking until you do. Because if it doesn't make any sense, you shouldn't do it. If it makes no sense to you, you need to know why you're doing it.
Yeah. If you
don't be afraid to ask questions to the people that are teaching you.
Yeah, like don't get lessons from a just trust me, bro guy.
No.
It's like no. You have to give
whether it's lessons or like programming or training or it's like
anything in life.
Like literally like work, it doesn't matter. Like you should do something with a purpose. You're not being brainless. Like learn the IQ of it, like think about why you're doing it and try to understand it. So then when you go to make your adjustments, it's a lot easier. So like make sure you do homework on your coach, like question him. It's not disrespectful. Like really like, hey, I actually want to know why we do this. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's all it has to be.
And if he has a problem with it, then that
says everything about him. He's insecure. He doesn't have an answer. He just has been around the game long enough where it's like he just did all this stuff or like he was just told to do this stuff. So he doesn't know why it's being done. He's just saying do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
100%. Guys, thank you for tuning into this one. If you want to see any other content that we make, go ahead and check out our YouTube page. If you have any suggestions for future stuff you want us to make, go ahead, leave it in the comments. As always, like, subscribe, share this video. Catch you on the next one.